America watched Jessica Sanchez rise. Then, everything changed. When Jessica Sanchez walked onto the American Idol stage, she was only 16 years old. She was young, nervous, and standing in front of millions of people who had never heard her name before. But the moment she opened her mouth, that changed. Suddenly, this teenager from Chula Vista, California, sounded like someone who had been performing for decades. Judges were stunned. The audience was stunned. And before long, America was watching her become one of the most talked about young singers of the entire season. But there was something nobody could see yet. Jessica Sanchez wasn't simply fighting to win a television competition. She was stepping into an industry that could change her life overnight, and then demand that she prove herself all over again once the cameras disappeared. Her story is not just about how a teenager became an American Idol finalist. It's about what happened when the spotlight moved on. And that's where Jessica Sanchez's story becomes much more interesting. Jessica was born on August 4, 1995, in Chula Vista, California. Her mother, Editha, is from the Philippines, while her father, Gilbert, is Mexican-American. From an early age, Jessica showed an extraordinary interest in singing. Her voice was powerful far beyond what people expected from such a young performer. And eventually, she decided to test that voice on national television.
In 2000, Jessica appeared on the 4th season of America's Got Talent when she was just 11 years old. She made it through the audition process, but her journey ended before the live shows. For most people, that might have been the end of the story. For Jessica, it was only an early chapter. A few years later, she auditioned for American Idol. This time, America was ready to listen. During her season 11 audition in San Diego, Jessica sang a powerful version of The Prayer. The performance immediately established something important about her. She wasn't being presented as a typical teenage pop singer. Her greatest weapon was her voice. Then came the difficult part. American Idol was not simply about having a great voice. Contestants had to survive weeks of pressure, criticism, public voting, rehearsals, interviews, and performances in front of millions of viewers. Jessica was still a teenager, yet week after week, she kept coming back. As the competition continued, Jessica began delivering performances that made it increasingly difficult to ignore her. She sang songs associated with some of the biggest voices in popular music, including Whitney Houston, Beyoncé, and other legendary artists. And instead of being overwhelmed by those comparisons, she often seemed to rise to the challenge. That created a new expectation. America no longer saw Jessica as just another contestant. She was becoming one of the favorites. But then something happened that could have ended the entire journey.
Jessica was eliminated during the Top 7 results show. For a moment, it looked like her American Idol story was over. She was only 16, and after weeks of surviving one of the most demanding singing competitions on television, she had suddenly been sent home. But American Idol had a twist. The judges had the power to use their one save of the season, and they used it on Jessica. The judges unanimously decided to save her, bringing her back into the competition. It was a huge television moment, but it also came with pressure. Jessica now had something to prove. The judges had publicly declared that they believed she belonged in the competition. The question was whether America would agree. And Jessica responded the only way she knew how. She sang. She continued through the competition, eventually reaching the finale alongside Phillip Phillips. By that point, Jessica had gone from an unknown teenager to one of the most recognizable young singers associated with American Idol. And then came the final vote. Jessica Sanchez finished the season as the runner-up, with Phillip Phillips taking the title. For some contestants, losing in the finale would feel devastating, but Jessica's situation was different. She had already achieved something remarkable. She had become a national name before she was even old enough to vote, and the music industry was watching. That should have been the moment when everything became easy. It wasn't. Because winning a television competition and building a sustainable career in music are two completely different things. American Idol can give an artist exposure. It cannot guarantee longevity. After the show, Jessica signed with Interscope Records and began working on her debut album. The opportunity was enormous. She had the television exposure. She had the voice. She had millions of people who knew her name. And in 2013, she released her debut studio album, Me, You, and the Music. The album included collaborations and songs designed to introduce Jessica as a recording artist, rather than simply an American Idol contestant. One of the most notable singles was Tonight, featuring Neo. On paper, the pieces were there, but the music business doesn't work on potential alone. An artist has to compete for attention in a marketplace filled with established stars, new performers, changing trends, streaming platforms, radio programmers, labels, and audiences whose attention can disappear almost instantly. Jessica had spent months becoming one of America's most recognizable television singers. Now she had to figure out how to become an artist people would continue listening to after the television show was over. And that transition is where many reality show contestants struggle. The audience remembers the moment. The industry is looking for the next chapter. Jessica's career didn't simply disappear after American Idol. She continued working. She performed, released music, appeared on television, and explored opportunities outside the traditional path of a pop recording career. She also appeared on Glee, taking on the role of Frida Romero in the show's 6th and final season. That opportunity mattered because it demonstrated that Jessica was capable of expanding beyond the exact image viewers had seen on American Idol. She wasn't just a competition singer anymore. She was trying to build a career as a performer. But there was another challenge. The same audience that had watched Jessica grow on American Idol had also watched her at the height of her exposure. And once the show ended, the spotlight became smaller. That can be difficult for any young performer. Imagine being 16 years old and suddenly having millions of people watching you. Then imagine being a few years older and realizing that millions of people are no longer watching. That's one of the hidden realities of fame. The hardest part isn't always becoming famous. Sometimes it's figuring out who you are when the attention changes. Jessica continued developing as an artist, and she did not completely abandon music. But her career after Idol became less about one giant television moment and more about finding her own direction. And that is why the phrase, "everything changed," doesn't mean that Jessica's life suddenly collapsed. It means something more complicated happened. The dream changed shape. The girl America first saw on American Idol was no longer the same teenager standing on that stage. She grew older. Her priorities changed. Her sound evolved. And the entertainment industry around her changed too. The music business that existed when Jessica auditioned for American Idol was already being transformed by YouTube, streaming, social media, and new ways for artists to reach audiences without depending entirely on traditional television and radio. That meant the rules were changing, and Jessica was growing up at the exact moment those rules were being rewritten. There is also something important that often gets lost when people talk about Jessica Sanchez. She was incredibly young when all of this happened. At 16, most teenagers are thinking about school, friends, family, and what they might want to do someday. Jessica was performing for millions of people. She was receiving criticism from judges and viewers. She was being compared to some of the greatest singers in history. And she was expected to behave like a professional while still growing up herself. That doesn't make her story tragic, but it does make it human. Because behind the television performances was a teenager trying to understand what came next. And that is the part of Jessica Sanchez's story that television couldn't fully show. American Idol gave her a platform. It gave her recognition. It gave her opportunities. But it couldn't give her a guaranteed future. No television show can.
Eventually, every contestant has to answer the same question. What do you do after America stops watching? Jessica's answer was not to simply disappear. She continued performing and working in entertainment. She explored acting. She continued releasing and performing music. And she developed a life beyond the narrow identity of being the girl who finished second on American Idol. That distinction matters, because when people remember reality television, they often remember rankings: winner, runner-up, eliminated, saved. But those labels don't define an entire career. Jessica Sanchez's American Idol journey gave her a beginning. It didn't give her an ending. And perhaps the most surprising part of her story is how early that beginning came. At just 16 years old, she had already performed in front of the entire country. She had already experienced elimination and a dramatic save. She had already reached a national television finale. She had already signed a major record deal. She had already released an album. And she had already learned something that many artists don't discover until much later. Being discovered is not the same thing as being established. That's the lesson hidden inside Jessica's story. America watched her rise. America watched her become a finalist. America watched her lose the title to Phillip Phillips. And then, slowly, the cameras moved somewhere else. But Jessica's life didn't stop when the television audience moved on. That may actually be the most important part. Because the real test of a young artist isn't what happens when everyone is watching. It's what happens when they aren't. Jessica Sanchez entered American Idol as a teenager with an extraordinary voice. She left as a nationally recognized performer. But the years afterward forced her to confront something far more difficult than a singing competition. She had to discover who Jessica Sanchez was without American Idol defining her. And that process takes longer than a 3-minute performance. It takes years. It takes failures. It takes opportunities that work and opportunities that don't. And it takes the willingness to keep moving when the biggest stage you've ever stood on is already behind you. Today, Jessica Sanchez is still remembered by millions of American Idol viewers for the voice that seemed almost impossible to believe belonged to a teenager. But her story deserves to be remembered for more than one competition. Because Jessica Sanchez wasn't simply the girl who almost won American Idol. She was a young artist who entered the national spotlight extraordinarily early, experienced the intensity of sudden fame, released music, expanded into television, and then had to navigate the much quieter and more complicated world that comes after reality television. And maybe that's what really changed. Not Jessica's talent, not her ability to sing, but the world around her. At the beginning, America was asking one question: can this girl win American Idol? By the end, the question was much bigger. What happens to a young artist when the show ends? Jessica Sanchez never got a simple answer. Instead, she got something much more realistic. A career that continued beyond the competition. A path that didn't always look the way people expected. And a reminder that sometimes finishing second on television is not the end of the story. It's simply the moment when the cameras stop telling it for you. And that is the part of Jessica Sanchez's journey that many viewers may have missed. America watched Jessica Sanchez rise. Then everything changed. But perhaps the real story is that when the spotlight changed, Jessica had to learn how to keep moving without it.